The most powerful banker in Europe is dragged from his palace in chains. Cosimo de Medici, the man who holds the debts of kings and popes, faces exile, possibly execution. His crime? Becoming too powerful through an invention that would change the world forever: modern banking. But this isn't a story about Cosimo's downfall. It's about how one family weaponized money itself, transforming gold into political power, and in the process, invented the financial systems we still use today. This is the story of how the Medici family didn't just get rich, they rewrote the rules of civilization. In 1397, Europe had a problem. Trade was exploding across the continent, but moving money was deadly. Merchants shipping gold and silver across bandit-infested roads faced robbery, extortion, and murder. The Catholic Church banned usury, charging interest on loans, which meant legitimate banking was technically heresy. And every city-state minted its own currency, making international trade a nightmare of exchange rates and fraud. Into this chaos stepped Giovanni di Bicci de Medici. Giovanni wasn't born into wealth. He was a minor branch of a minor Florentine family. But in 1397, he opened a modest banking office in Florence with one revolutionary insight. The future belonged not to those who hoarded gold, but to those who could move it. Giovanni perfected the bill of exchange, a piece of paper that was worth more than its weight in gold. Here's how it worked. A wool merchant in London could deposit 100 florins with the Medici bank there. The Medici would give him a signed letter. He'd travel to Florence, carrying only paper, and exchange that letter for 100 florins minus a small fee at the Medici branch there. No gold crossed borders, no robberies, no risk. But here's the masterstroke. The fee wasn't called interest, it was called an exchange rate fluctuation. The Catholic Church couldn't call it usury because technically you were just exchanging currencies. Giovanni had found a loophole in God's law. By 1420, the Medici Bank had branches in Rome, Venice, Naples, Milan, Pisa, Geneva, Lyon, Basel, Avignon, Bruges, London, and Lubeck. They created something that never existed, an international financial network. They pioneered double-entry bookkeeping, every transaction recorded twice as both a debit and credit. This meant the Medici could track every florin across every branch in real time. They knew their financial position at any moment, a staggering advantage when competitors were still scratching numbers on wax tablets. Each branch operated as a partnership with local managers who shared in profits. This incentivized loyalty and local expertise while maintaining Medici control. It was an early form of franchise capitalism. When Giovanni died in 1429, he passed the bank to his son, Cosimo, with one warning: stay out of politics. Cosimo did the opposite. He understood that the real money wasn't in merchant trade, it was in lending to the powerful. Cosimo became the primary banker to the papal court. Popes needed money to fund their lavish courts, their armies, their building projects. Cosimo gave it to them at a price. He loaned to kings, Edward IV of England, Charles VII of France, countless Italian princes, all owed money to Cosimo de Medici. And debt, Cosimo learned, was the most powerful weapon in the world. When you owe the bank 100 florins, you have a problem. When you owe the bank 100,000 florins, the bank has a problem, which means the bank will do anything to keep you in power, keep you solvent, keep you borrowing. By 1433, Cosimo had become the wealthiest man in Florence without holding a single official title. He pulled strings, influenced elections, and essentially controlled the republic from behind the scenes. The old aristocratic families had had enough.
Led by the Albizzi family, they arrested Cosimo on charges of tyranny and sentenced him to exile. This should have been the end. Exile meant death for most bankers. Cut off from your network, your wealth evaporates. But Cosimo understood something his enemies didn't. He wasn't just a man anymore. He was a system. Within a year, Cosimo's debtors began to panic. Without Medici credit, trade slowed. Without Medici loans, political allies went bankrupt. The very machinery of Florentine commerce began to seize up. In 1434, a new government swept into power, one friendly to the Medici. They invited Cosimo back in triumph. His enemies were exiled, and Cosimo never made the same mistake again. He ruled Florence for the next 30 years without ever calling himself a ruler. He held no office higher than citizen, but he controlled the banks, which meant he controlled everything. Under Cosimo and his grandson, Lorenzo the Magnificent, the Medici perfected a formula that every modern power broker has copied. 1. Control the flow of money, not just the money itself. The Medici didn't need to own all the gold, they just needed to control how it moved. 2. Make yourself indispensable. Lend to so many powerful people that your collapse becomes unthinkable. 3. Buy legitimacy. The Medici poured millions into art, architecture, and scholarship. They funded Michelangelo, Botticelli, Leonardo da Vinci, Galileo. They built churches and libraries. They became synonymous with civilization itself. 4. Turn money into power, then use power to make more money. It's a flywheel that, once spinning, becomes almost unstoppable. The Medici Bank eventually collapsed in 1494 under the weight of bad loans and political upheaval. But by then, the family had evolved beyond banking. They'd become royalty, producing 4 popes and 2 queens of France. Today, when you use a credit card in a foreign country, you're using the Medici bill of exchange. When corporations set up subsidiaries in different nations, they're copying the Medici branch system. When the Federal Reserve backstops major banks because they're too big to fail, they're proving Cosimo's lesson. Make yourself essential enough, and power has no choice but to protect you. The Medici didn't just invent modern banking, they discovered something more profound. In a complex economy, controlling the flow of money is more powerful than controlling armies, more lasting than controlling land, more absolute than controlling governments. Money, they proved, isn't just a tool of power. In the right hands, money is power. And that lesson, written in the account books of a Florentine banking family 6 centuries ago, still rules the world. The collapse of the Medici Bank in 1494 should have been the end of the story. The family was expelled from Florence, their wealth was scattered, their enemies celebrated. But here's what makes the Medici truly remarkable. They had already transcended banking. The Medici popes, buying heaven itself. In 1513, Giovanni de Medici became Pope Leo X, the first Medici pope. His famous quote upon election, "God has given us the papacy, let us enjoy it." And enjoy it he did. Leo X spent money like water, funded Michelangelo and Raphael, and presided over the height of Renaissance culture. But his lavish spending required money, lots of it. To raise funds, he expanded the sale of indulgences. Pay money, reduce your time in purgatory. This decision would accidentally trigger the Protestant Reformation when Martin Luther nailed his 95 Theses to a church door in 1517, protesting this very practice. A second Medici, Giulio, became Pope Clement VII in 1523. During his papacy, Rome was brutally sacked by imperial troops in 1527, partially because Clement couldn't navigate the dangerous politics between France and the Holy Roman Empire. Two Medici popes, both shaped the course of Christianity itself. The Grand Dukes, permanent power. In 1537, Cosimo I de Medici became Duke of Florence. Unlike his ancestors who ruled from the shadows, Cosimo I made it official. In 1569, he became the first Grand Duke of Tuscany, a title recognized by the Pope and the Holy Roman Emperor. The Medici were no longer bankers pretending to be citizens. They were legitimate royalty. The Grand Duchy of Tuscany under the Medici became one of the most stable, prosperous states in Italy. They ruled for nearly 200 years until 1737, when the male line died out. But the family's influence spread even further through strategic marriages. Catherine de Medici married King Henry II of France in 1533. When he died, she became Queen Regent and effectively ruled France through 3 of her sons who became kings. She was one of the most powerful women in 16th century Europe, known for her political cunning, her role in the French Wars of Religion, and allegedly for introducing Italian culture and cuisine to France. Her niece, Marie de Medici, also became Queen of France, marrying King Henry IV in 1600. She ruled as regent after his assassination and commissioned the famous Rubens paintings celebrating her life, now in the Louvre. 2 Medici women sat on the throne of France. The final legacy, the last Medici's gift. The last Medici Grand Duke, Gian Gastone, died in 1737 with no heirs. The dynasty was finished. But his sister, Anna Maria Luisa de Medici, did something extraordinary. In her will, she left the entire Medici art collection, centuries of accumulated masterpieces by Michelangelo, Botticelli, Leonardo, Raphael, Donatello, Caravaggio, and countless others, to the people of Florence, on one condition: it must never leave the city. This single act created what would become the Uffizi Gallery, one of the greatest art museums in the world. Every tourist who visits Florence today experiences the Medici legacy. The immortality formula. So here's the complete arc. 1397 to 1494, bankers, they invented modern finance. 1494 to 1537, exiles and survivors, they lost everything but adapted. 1513 to 1534, popes, they controlled the Catholic Church. 1537 to 1737, Grand Dukes, they became legitimate royalty. 1533 to 1642, queens, their blood merged with European royalty. 1737 to forever, cultural immortals. Their art collection ensures they'll never be forgotten. 340 years, that's how long the Medici dynasty lasted from Giuliani's first bank to the death of the last Grand Duke. But here's what's truly remarkable. They transformed themselves 3 times over. When banking failed, they had already built political power. When politics turned against them, they had already secured religious authority. When their male line died out, they had already embedded themselves in European royalty and culture. The Medici understood something profound. True power isn't about controlling one thing. It's about building a system so interconnected that even when parts of it fail, the whole survives. Today, the Medici Bank is gone. The Grand Duchy of Tuscany is gone. But walk through Florence, visit the Uffizi, look at the dome of the cathedral they funded, stand in the Medici Chapel designed by Michelangelo, and you'll see that the Medici never really died at all. They did something better than accumulating wealth. They transformed money into art, art into power, power into legitimacy, and legitimacy into immortality. The Medici didn't just change banking, they proved that with enough intelligence, patience, and ruthlessness, a single family could reshape civilization itself and make sure they'd be remembered forever. Because in the end, the ultimate currency isn't gold, it's legacy. And by that measure, the Medici may be the richest family that ever lived.